So there's a nationwide lock-in effect on tens of millions of homes that have extremely low mortgage rates. And at this point, with mortgage, not just mortgage rates, but property taxes also having increased in states like Texas and Florida, people are locked in, so they're not moving. So single family home prices have remained stable. Then they're not going up, and they're actually projected to go down a few percent over the next year or two.
Let's talk about this upcoming distress in multifamily. I mean, what is your take on what's happening? Kind of give us some of the data and some of the things that you're gleaning from this data.
Yeah, I'm going to use single family as an example, and that'll make it really, really simple to understand what's happening, right? So one day before COVID, the average mortgage for a single family home in the United States was $1,500. Today, that same mortgage for that same home is about 3,000, a little shy of 3,000. So it's almost double. The mortgage is almost doubled, right? Which is crazy, because obviously incomes haven't doubled since the day before COVID. Incomes are probably up 12 or 13%. So as you can imagine, there's this huge increase, right, over time. And rents have only gone up, a little bit. They've gone up. Maybe they've gone up 15 or 20, maybe even 25% since the day before COVID, but they haven't doubled. So you see this change and you go, wow, the single family market should be crashing, right? Because like people who had a $1,500 mortgage now have a $3,000 mortgage. They clearly can't afford that. So the home prices must be coming down. They're not. Home prices in the United States basically have gone up about 1.8% in the last 12 months. And you go, that makes no sense whatsoever, right? People just simply can't afford double the mortgage. And the answer is the reason home prices in the US are not coming down, and in fact have gone up about 1.8%, is simply because of the lock-in effect. So during COVID, interest rates fell. Like, for example, I was able to refinance my home. I have a big fat home in California, and I was able to refinance it for 1.75%. A bunch of people refinanced in the 2s, some in the 3s, and some in the low 4s. And so those people can no longer leave, because today a 30-year mortgage is 7.3%. So there's a nationwide lock-in effect on tens of millions of homes that have extremely low mortgage rates. And at this point, with mortgage, not just mortgage rates, but property taxes also having increased in states like Texas and Florida, people are locked in, so they're not moving. So single family home prices have remained stable. Then they're not going up, and they're actually projected to go down a few percent over the next year or two, but there's stability there. That isn't the case in multifamily. And the reason for that is very simple. The lock-in effect wasn't there in multifamily because in 2019, 2020, 2021, the people that were purchasing multifamily properties, the people that were buying large apartment complexes, they were buying them using floating loans, because floating loans is really the only thing that made sense for the vast majority of projects. If they wanted double-digit returns for their investors, they had to use floating loans. And because they used those floating loans, as you can imagine, those loans started at maybe 4% in mid 2021, and today many of those have gone up to 9%. And that 5% difference means that 3,000 to 4,000 large properties, we're talking 200 units, 3,000 to 4,000 large properties are now cash flow negative. Because at 4%, they were cash flowing. At 5, cash flowing. 6, maybe cash flowing. By 7, they were under. And now those rates are 8 or 9. And here's the catch. These properties, some of them had what is known as a rate cap. A rate cap basically is like buying insurance. You buy it from another vendor, and the vendor says, hey, if the interest rate goes up beyond this point, then everything above that we'll pay you. We'll give it to you so you don't have exposure. Well, those rate caps, Brett, those rate caps were usually 2 years long, and some of them were even 1 year long. People bought rate caps that were 1 year or 2 years, and back then the rate caps were cheap. People were buying them for $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 rate caps. Today, those rate caps are $800,000, $1 million, $1.2 million, $2 million for a rate cap, right? So now your rate, if you were capped, already you're probably bleeding a little bit, but you're about to start bleeding a huge amount because your rate cap's going to expire, which means that you now have to come up from somewhere with $1 million or $2 million for a new rate cap. And firstly, your investor is not going to give you that money because your property hasn't been cash flowing in the last 2 years because of the increase in interest rates. The property's probably been bleeding. You've probably been doing cash calls. Your investors have had to put in more money. Well, they're not going to give you a couple $1 million for a rate cap. So now you have this scenario, and I'll stop here. This scenario where 3 to 5 thousand multifamily properties are going to go back to the bank in the next 12 months. That represents an incredible buying opportunity.